How many of us appreciate authority? Maybe a better question would be, how many of us like to be the one who has the authority? You know, I can remember when I was younger, and this was rare, but maybe it was like my birthday or something special, and my parents might say, Stephen, you get to choose. Where are we going for dinner? I'm like, well, I got all the power in the world. This is awesome. I think if we're honest with ourselves, we like to be the one who has authority. You know, this weekend I'm going to preach about a book because I want to convince you it's not always movies. So in The Lord of the Rings, I've been waiting all week for that, you know? Thank you, that was great. But in The Lord of the Rings, there's this guy, his name is Denethor, and there's this kingdom Gondor. So Gondor is this place that has this steward, his name is Denethor, and he's watching over the city until the king returns, because the throne of the king is empty. And that's why the third book is called The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. So they're waiting for this king to return. And so Denethor is the steward who's watching over it. He's the master of the palace. Until one day, Gandalf shows up, and Gandalf is like, hey man, we need Gondor. We need Gondor to join the battle, and he's trying to convince Denethor of this. But Denethor believes it's just a evil ploy to get him removed from his throne, because what has Denethor falsely done? He's now assumed that since there's no king, he can just be the king. So he's assumed an authority that doesn't actually belong to him. And so he casts Gandalf out and he says, I won't do this. And of course, Gandalf's upset because he goes, oh, the pride of men, you know. But the point is that Denethor has taken an authority that doesn't belong to him. It belongs to the king. What's interesting about this moment in The Lord of the Rings is Tolkien was inspired, that character was inspired by our first reading. So many people who love The Lord of the Rings know this, that this person, this character, was inspired by Shebna in our first reading. Who is Shebna? Well, as you heard at the beginning of that reading, Shebna is the master of the palace. He's the one who can unlock the door and lock the door. He's the one who controls access to the king. But the problem with Shebna, just like Denethor, the only difference here is that there is a king, the seat isn't empty. The problem is Shebna has now taken control himself. He now falsely believes that he is the one in control. And he assumes an authority that does not actually belong to him. He has taken away the king's authority. And so it's in that context that the Lord sends the prophet to Shebna, and this is what we heard. The Lord will thrust you from your office, will remove you because you have done something that you're not allowed to do. I will summon my servant Eliakim. I will clothe him with your robe. I will give Eliakim your sash, and I will confer on him your authority. So what's happening here? The authority that Shebna had as master of the palace is being removed from him and given to someone else because he's abused his authority. And so it's being given to Eliakim. And then right after that, I will place the key of the house of David on Eliakim's shoulder. What he opens, no one will shut. What he shuts, no one will open. And this, my friend, should be very obvious to us Catholics, what's going on here. Because this relates so well with our gospel this morning. Because what just happened in our gospel? Here we have Jesus, he's with his disciples, and he asks them this question. He wonders aloud, who do people say that I am? Elijah, Jeremiah, others say one of the prophets. And Jesus says, no, who do you? Who do you say that I am? And of course, Peter responds, you are the Christ. You are the Son of the living God. And so, what does Jesus do? He says, Peter, I will name you Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of the netherworld shall not prevail against it. I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. Well, now after we have the context of that first reading, this should be very clear. What's happening here? Jesus is conferring on Peter an authority. He's giving Peter an authority to be the new Eliakim, to be the new master of the palace, to be the one with the keys. And what palace is Peter the master of? Not an earthly kingdom, but a spiritual palace, a spiritual kingdom. In other words, Jesus is conferring on Peter the authority of the papacy, of the Pope. These readings are all about the authority of the papacy. Which goes back to that question, do we appreciate authority? I hope we do, because it's because of the authority of the church, it's because of the authority of the Pope and the bishops that we have our faith as it is today. What's their job? To safeguard what the church believes and teaches so that it can be handed on to generations to come and after us. And so it's because of the Pope and the bishops that we understand what real Orthodox is, who God is, who Jesus is, how salvation is possible through Christ, and how Jesus saves us. These are all questions the church has grappled with and explained to us the authority of the Pope. These are things for us to be grateful for. But I think the question is, and this is, I admit, challenging. This is a very challenging word for us this morning. It's tempting for you and me to be Shebna, because our gospel, there's the king, there's the new Eliakim Peter, and Shebna still exists. And Shebna is any of us, anytime that we take on an authority that does not belong to us. And so, for example, whenever we think that we know better than the church when it comes to things like marriage and sexuality, divorce and annulments, which I know are hard, or maybe it's last weekend's homily, which was beautifully done by Deacon Denny, challenging us about immigrants and that we ought to be a place, part of being pro-life is welcoming the stranger in our midst. These are all challenging things. But the reality is, whenever we go against the church on these things, we become Shebna. We take an authority onto ourselves that doesn't belong to us. And so here's the challenge for us, is to recognize that the authority of the church is a great gift. And here's why. Pope Leo just released an encyclical on AI. That's awesome. That's a good thing. Why? Because this is a new technology that's making us grapple with new questions about what it means to be human and what real authorship looks like and all of the creativity and all these things. And how does AI coexist in a way with humanity? And Leo's offering us some reflections on that. We should appreciate that. We should appreciate that our Pope, who has the authority to speak about faith and morals, does that for us. And so my first encouragement for you and me is simply this: to appreciate authority. But the second one is to recognize that none of us have that authority in and of ourselves. Because the moment we do, we become our own Pope. And we automatically get rid of the gift that keeps us one, you know? It's through the Pope and the College of Bishops that we are one holy, Catholic, and apostolic church. And so this weekend, let us be mindful of the great gift of the authority of the church. Be grateful that Jesus did what he did in our gospel today, that he made Peter the new Eliakim. Why? To safeguard what is beautiful, to safeguard the spiritual palace that belongs to Christ. And this authority is a gift for you and me.